Secretary Noem, thank you for appearing today. As you know, I've been concerned for a long time about gain-of-function research. I commend the president and the administration for having an executive order to stop it. Some of the problems are in the definitions of it. You know, Anthony Fauci said if it's an animal virus, it can't be, it cannot be gain-of-function. And yet animal viruses can be trained to infect humans. And we think that's what happened ultimately with COVID-19. We think some of the dangerous research is going on at the lab controlled by DHS. Have you begun to look into this? I know Secretary Kennedy said that you and he will be going out, and I've requested permission to attend that as you go out to look at these labs. Have you looked at these labs any yet to get a feeling for what gain of function?
Mr. Chairman, are we going to have opening comments from the Secretary, or are we skipping that as well?
Oh, I neglected that. I went right into questions without doing that. So let's
your
start
committee,
again.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's start again. Secretary Noem, you are recognized for your remarks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Peters, for the honor of allowing me to be here today. Thank you to all the senators for your participation and oversight into the Department of Homeland Security. I'm looking forward to visiting with you about all of the accomplishments that we've been able to tackle these first several months of this Trump administration. I'm also blessed to have my husband with me today, so I thank him for his support and my family's support as well as I fill this role for our country. Having previously served 8 years as a member of Congress, it's my distinct honor to be on this side of the dais today as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Today, I'm proud to discuss all of our accomplishments since President Trump took office, and he has set us a full agenda as a priority. High on the list is the mandate, and was the mandate on the very first day, to secure our southern border and to start deporting illegal criminal aliens. The border crisis is the biggest problem that was facing our country, and it was one that was imperative to fixing for our nation's future. We're solving this crisis at a record pace, and we have delivered the most secure border in American history. We've obtained near complete operational control of the border, with daily encounters down 93% since President Trump took office. And because we're fixing this biggest challenge so quickly, President Trump can focus on other priorities as well and problems that are facing the American people. Let's just look at the last 10 days. Last week, he signed a historic prescription drug reduction in pricing executive order that will slash prices for the American people. After that, he went on a trip to completely rewrite America's relationship with the Middle East. During this trip, he secured trillions of dollars of new investments in the United States with several Middle Eastern countries. He's also taking steps towards rebuilding our relationship with Syria. The last living American hostage held by Hamas, Eden Alexander, was finally released and returned home to his family. He announced major new trade deals with both China and the United Kingdom. And just yesterday, President Trump jump-started ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine. And with only the kind of leadership that President Trump could provide, we prevented the breakout of an all-out war between India and Pakistan. These historic accomplishments were possible because President Trump confronted right away the chaos at the southern border. President Trump can continue to not only make America safe, but he can also continue to work to make the entire world safer. Now, at the Department of Homeland Security under President Trump, we've already delivered a drastic turnaround in Homeland Security, from the southern border to our Coast Guard to cyberspace. And we're just getting started. The secure border has allowed our men and women of law enforcement at DHS to zero in on fighting cartels and their illicit activities. Under President Trump, we have designated 6 cartels and 4 dangerous criminal gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. This has allowed us to take a whole-of-government approach to going after these murderers and these drug traffickers. In March, fentanyl traffic at the border fell 54% compared to the previous year. And once again, the United States is enforcing immigration laws to arrest, identify, detain, and remove dangerous illegal alien criminals. We're prioritizing those that are a public safety threat to people, especially those who are affiliated with the terrorist organizations MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Customs and Border Protection has worked to enforce President Trump's America First trade agenda, and the Biden administration's trade policies that hollowed out America's industrial base have been changed. We are no longer shipping our jobs overseas. Instead, we're using tariffs as an effective negotiating tool. The Department of Homeland Security is reforming emergency management in this country. We have the FEMA Review Council, which will be doing the work to make recommendations and also work with this body to change the department into something that actually gives more local and state control. And that first council meeting is today. We are also taking steps to defend the nation's transportation systems, which are vulnerable targets for attack. The Transportation Security Administration is responsible for ensuring all of the safety of individuals who travel. In a single day, there are 45,000 flights and nearly 2.9 million Americans and passengers in the United States. We're also fulfilling our obligation, and did do so, to implement Real ID, which was enacted and put in law over 20 years ago. Validated IDs secure travel, safeguard our elections, and help make sure that we never experience another tragedy like 9/11 again. And as technology advances, so do the threats to our nation. That's why cybersecurity is so crucial to our future. Countries like Communist China have the capability and the intent to infiltrate and to potentially disrupt our critical infrastructure systems. Despite these threats, the Biden administration instead used CISA to promote politics and police speech. Under President Trump, we've been working to get CISA back on its intended cybersecurity mission. The Coast Guard is the only branch of the U.S. Armed Forces that is under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. It has many missions with specialized needs. And as we secure our southern border, the cartels have shifted their activities out into our maritime borders. The Coast Guard has already surpassed fiscal year 2024's drug interdiction numbers just since President Trump took office. And they have also excelled at search and rescue while interdiction of illicit substances as well. Still, the Coast Guard is facing our greatest readiness crisis since World War II. We have a plan to reinvigorate this critical component to make sure they're ready for the future. And with Force Design 2028, we will transform the Coast Guard into a more agile, capable, and responsive force. We're making sure that they have the resources and that they have the vision to lead and to be the point of the spear in the future. They're examples of bravery and patriotism and dedication. It's our responsibility to continue to provide for them the resources that they need to continue doing the important work that they do. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to answering your questions, and I yield back.
Well, great. You got a preview of my questions since I went out of order, but
That's all right.
the NBAC, the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center out there by Fort Detrick, we're concerned they're still doing some dangerous research out there, and it needs more oversight. Do you have any update for us on that?
I do, and I want to thank the chairman for bringing a lot of history to my knowledge of this lab and the work that it was doing, and I appreciate Secretary Kennedy's input as well. Yes, we do have a visit planned in the future here in the next 10 days to 2 weeks with Secretary Kennedy to look into the work that this lab is doing and if it is appropriate for the Department of Homeland Security to be engaged in that. I think your concerns have created some oversight that is very helpful and will be helpful in making sure that they're doing correct research that actually is beneficial and not research that's been abused in the past.
So the president has banned gain of function, and as you and I have discussed, it's important that someone can simply come forward who disagrees and says, well, this doesn't meet the definition of gain of function. This is essentially what Anthony Fauci did when everybody said the research in Wuhan was gain of function. They were taking an animal virus, they were running it through an animal model with human lungs over and over again and adapting it to be infectious in humans. That is gain of function. So the people and personnel make a difference. And so what I would ask is, as you ask the career people out there who've been doing the experiments, you realize that their natural tendency is to want to keep doing what they've been doing. So I think it's going to take scrutiny, new people, new scientists, consultants to look at each one of these and say, don't just tell me you're not doing it. Give me a list of 20 or 30 experiments. What are you doing? And as an example of that, we've been sending records requests for 3 years and we got nothing until you came into office. And I hope that you will be looking at our records requests. They're all dated in time, some of them by 5 Republicans, some of them by Republicans and Democrats, and they were just routinely ignored. Have you had a chance to look at the chain of questioning here to see if there's anybody that was actually purposely obstructing us?
Yeah, so I thank you for asking those questions and talking about the follow-up to members of Congress, senators and representatives. My predecessor didn't respond to anybody. It didn't matter if you were a Republican or a Democrat. He didn't respond to your letters and your oversight. And I've tasked all of my people with changing that about our Department of Homeland Security, that we will be responsive to Congress. We've given you about 50,000 pages, I think, so far of information. We continue to get and gather more data and facts that we can return to you so you can conduct oversight. What I would say is between NIH and the Department of Homeland Security, there are no research projects ongoing right now today or that we've been able to find as far as projects they were doing together. We did have a couple of employees that were contracted for their specialty backgrounds that have done work over at NIH before, but that kind of oversight needs to happen. And I think it's important that we have an independent outside source that also is reviewing the work that they do.
As you're collecting the records, I would just ask that you ask the people, why wasn't it given before, and see if you can find where the chain of command ended. Were there people purposely not giving us the records because they really shouldn't be employed by government? Secretary Mayorkas has told us repeatedly that there was no censorship going on. The CISA wasn't doing anything. They weren't involved with speech. We know from the Twitter files they were. Have you ever uncovered any internal communications or activities that contradict their testimony with regard to the government being involved in censorship?
Yes, sir. We have literally found thousands of documents that have proven that they were involved in censorship and policing speech. So we will be unveiling these to this committee and making sure we're exposing what CISA was doing with a vast majority of its time of certain employees. And some of the discussion I think we'll have here today is about getting CISA back on mission and some of the reductions in staff that have been over there. And that's reflective in the fact that many of them were doing work that they shouldn't have been doing.
And I hope you'll look at our bill, the Risky Research Review Act. Administrations do a lot of things and a lot of good things, and then they go away when the next administration comes in. The good thing about this legislation, it would be a presidential commission of scientists to define on a continual basis what is or isn't gain of function, to rule on that. It's been voted by in a bipartisan way. It was a unanimous vote out of this committee. It's one of the few things in Congress we actually, I think, have bipartisan support for. So we hope the administration will look at that and consider making a public endorsement of that. Okay. That way we can make permanent the things you're trying to do to constrain gain of function. Thank you for that, your testimony. And with that, I recognize Senator Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Dome, thank you for being here again before the committee today. I also appreciated the time we spent yesterday morning on the phone discussing a variety of issues, and I look forward to those kinds of discussions continuing in the future. As you know, the protections for sharing information under the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015, confusingly referred to as CISA 2015, but it deals with the information sharing, expires at the end of September. This is a critical authority that applies to information sharing across the federal government, not only to CISA, the agency, but it also allows the agency the ability to have robust and timely cyber threat information shared between public and private sectors, as well as among private sector companies. So folks have an understanding of the threat landscape that's out there and have full awareness of what's coming at them by nefarious actors. Does the administration support the extension of this incredibly important authority that I've been hearing about from a number of stakeholders that they're very concerned it's going to expire? Does the administration support the extension?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Senator Peters. It's a very important piece of legislation. Does endorse it for 10 more years, which I think is a long enough time frame for us to really make sure that we have the stability we need in this area to create those kind of partnerships you were talking about with private industry. We need their expertise and their knowledge and their interaction with those across the world that hate the United States of America to come in and cooperate with us to make sure we're prepared to secure our systems and our critical infrastructure.
Great. Well, I look forward to your support, the administration's support, so we can pass this extension, a 10-year extension, before it expires. You're absolutely right how critical it is. Secretary O'Donnell, I'm also concerned about the increasing number of security threats that we're seeing from drone incursions to public spaces, to airports, critical infrastructure sites all across our country, as we spoke about yesterday morning. Just last week, a man in Michigan was arrested after he allegedly tried to attack the U.S. Army's Tank Automotive and Armaments Command facility at the Detroit Arsenal in Warren. According to prosecutors, the man flew a drone over the facility to conduct operational reconnaissance, further highlighting the need to ensure that law enforcement is properly resourced to deal with this growing threat. While I understand that there are safety concerns with the technology that need to be addressed by the FAA, I would like for all of us to work together to reauthorize DHS and DOJ's counter-drone authorities that also expire at the end of September because this threat, as you know, is not going away. Last Congress, Senator Johnson and I introduced a bill, S-1631, that I think is a good starting point. So my question for you, Secretary Noem, is can I get your commitment that we can work together to not only reauthorize these authorities on a long-term basis, but actually strengthen those authorities to make sure we deal with this persistent threat?
Yes, Senator Peters, I'll take a look at your legislation specifically, but we do need to reauthorize the authorities that we do have in order to address not just our Homeland Security day-to-day activities, but we're hosting some very large events in this country that will, I think, challenge our ability to secure that many large events at one time. So having those kind of authorities and addressing what we can do to cooperate with states and local governments and cities in locations where big events happen would be very important to do that. So you're right, the expansion of those authorities needs to be looked at to make sure it's appropriate, but also gives us the tools we need to keep people safe. We've got the Club Cup coming this summer, the World Cup next summer, which will be 10 million ticketed people, 22 million people that will be involved in the activities surrounding it. The Olympics coming, It's important we address this now so we can be proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. So Senator Johnson and I would appreciate it. And our biggest supporter for our bill is actually the National Football League, who have real concerns about their games. We've already had games interrupted, and it could be more serious at some point. Secretary Noem, 2 weeks ago during a Senate appropriations hearing, you told me very clearly to the questions that I had that CISA was, quote, back on mission, end of quote. If this is accurate, my question is, why is the administration proposing to cut $500 million from an agency's budget for an agency that's on mission right now, when those activities you previously described as off mission, specifically election security work, cost about $20 million. Those folks have been let go. They're no longer there. I can understand a cut of $20 million, but this is a cut of $500 million. So specific, what if you could tell this committee what specific activities or departments at CISA does the department plan to cut as a result of these very large proposed cuts? And if you could please give some specific examples of offices and programs. And you know, as you know, the CISA statutory requirements are extensive. You have a lot on your plate. You have a lot to cover. You need to have resources to do that. But this is a pretty significant cut in funding, and we need to know exactly what protection will not be offered after these cuts go into effect.
Yeah, we will continue to fulfill all the statutory requirements that the Department of Homeland Security has and has given to CISA as in the work that it does. Putting it back on mission means that it fulfills the responsibility of why it was created. And that's to be the cybersecurity agency of the nation, to go out and secure our critical infrastructure, work with small and medium-sized businesses and states and localities to give them the insight and wisdom they need to make sure that they're not vulnerable to hackers or nefarious activity. Getting rid of censorship, getting rid of the Ministry of Truth at CISA, the employees that were duplicative, that were fulfilling roles that wasn't related to cybersecurity.